Chapter 4. Tesseract moving through 3-space. Models of the sections. In order to obtain a clear conception of the higher solid, a certain amount of familiarity with the facts shown in these models is necessary. But the best way of obtaining a systematic knowledge is shown hereafter. What these models enable us to do is to take a general review of the subject. In all of them we see simply the boundaries of the tesseract in our space. We can no more see or touch the tesseract's solidity than a plane being can touch the cube's solidity. There remain the four models 9, 10, 11, 12. Model 9 represents what lies between I and 2. If I be moved an inch in the unknown direction, it traces out the tesseract and ends in 2. But, obviously, between I and 2 there must be an infinite number of exactly similar solid sections. These are all like Model 9. Take the case of a plane being on the table. He sees the black square, that is, he sees the lines round it, and he knows that, if it moves an inch in some mysterious direction, it traces a new kind of figure, the opposite boundary whereof is the white square. If, then, he has models of the white and black squares, he is before him the end and beginning of our cube. But between these squares are any number of others, the plane sections of the cube. We can see what they are. The interior of each is a light buff, the sides are of the colors of the vertical faces of the cube, and the points of the colors of the vertical lines of the cube, viz. Dark blue, blue-green, light yellow, vermilion lines, and brown, French gray, dark slate, green points. Thus, the square, in moving in the unknown direction, traces out a succession of squares, the assemblage of which makes the cube in layers. So also the cube, moving in the unknown direction, will at any point of its motion still be a cube, and the assemblage of cubes thus placed constitutes the tesseract in layers. We suppose the cube to change its color directly it begins to move. Its color between 1 and 2 we can easily determine by finding what colors its different parts assume as they move in the unknown direction. The gold point immediately begins to trace a stone line. We will look at cube 5 to see what the vermilion face becomes. We know the interior of that cube is pale green. Table, page 122. Hence, as it moves in the unknown direction, the vermilion square forms in its course a series of pale green squares. The brown line gives rise to a yellow square, hence, at every point of its course in the fourth direction, it is a yellow line, until, on taking its final position, it becomes a dull blue line. Looking at cube 5, we see that the deep yellow line becomes a light red line, the green line a deep crimson one, the gold point a stone one, the light blue point a rich red one, the red point an emerald one, and the buff point a light green one. Now, take the Model 9. Looking at the left side of it, we see exactly that into which the vermilion square is transformed as it moves in the unknown direction. The left side is an exact copy of a section of cube 5, parallel to the vermilion face. But we have only accounted for one side of our Model 9. There are 5 other sides. Take the near side corresponding to the dark blue square on cube I. When the dark blue square moves, it traces a dark stone cube, of which we have a copy in cube 7. Looking at 7, we see that, as soon as the dark blue square begins to move, it becomes of a dark stone color, and has yellow, ochre, yellow-green, and azure sides, and stone, rich red, green-blue, smoke lines running in the unknown direction from it. Now, the side of Model 9, which faces us, has these colors, the squares being seen as lines, and the lines as points. Hence Model 9 is a copy of what the cube becomes, so far as the vermilion and dark blue sides are concerned. When, moving in the unknown direction, it traces the tesseract. We will now look at the lower square of our model. It is a brick red square, with azure, rose, sea blue, and light brown lines, and with stone, smoke, magenta, and light green points. This, then, is what the black square should change into, as it moves in the unknown direction. Let us look at Model 3. Here the stone line, which is the line in the unknown direction, runs downwards. It is turned into the downwards direction, so that the cube traced by the black square may be in our space. The color of this cube is brick red. The orange line has traced an azure, the blue line a light brown, the crimson line a rose, and the green-gray line a sea blue square. Hence, the lower square of Model 9 shows what the black square becomes as it traces the tesseract, or, in other words, the section of Model 3 between the black and bright green squares exactly corresponds to the lower face of Model 9. Therefore, it appears that Model 9 is a model of a section of the tesseract, that it is to the tesseract what a square between the black and white squares is to the cube. To prove the other side's correct, we have to see what the white, blue-green, and light yellow squares of cube I become as the cube moves in the unknown direction. This can be effected by means of the models 4, 6, 8. Each cube can be used as an index for showing the changes through which any side of the first model passes as it moves in the unknown direction till it becomes cube 2. Thus, what becomes of the white square? Look at cube 4. From the light blue corner of its white square runs downwards the rich red line in the unknown direction. If we take a parallel section below the white square, we have a square bounded by ochre, deep brown, deep green, and light red lines, and by rich red, green blue, sea green, and emerald points. The color of the cube is chocolate, and therefore its section is chocolate. This description is exactly true of the upper surface of Model 9. There still remain two sides, those corresponding to the light yellow and blue-green of cube I. What the blue-green square becomes midway between cubes I and 2 can be seen on Model 6. The color of the last named is oak yellow, and a section parallel to its blue-green side is surrounded by yellow-green, deep brown, dark gray, and rose lines and by green-blue, smoke, magenta, and sea green points. This is exactly similar to the right side of Model 9. Lastly, that which becomes of the light yellow side can be seen on Model 8. The section of the cube is a salmon square bounded by deep crimson, deep green, dark gray, and sea blue lines and by emerald, sea green, magenta, and light green points. Thus the models can be used to answer any question about sections. For we have simply to take, instead of the whole cube, a plane, and the relation of the whole tesseract to that plane can be told by looking at the model, which, starting with that plane, stretches from it in the unknown direction. We have not as yet settled the color of the interior of Model 9. It is that part of the tesseract which is traced out by the interior of cube I. The unknown direction starts equally and simultaneously from every point of every part of cube I, just as the up direction starts equally and simultaneously from every point of a square. Let us suppose that the cube, which is light buff, changes to a wood color directly it begins to trace the tesseract, then the internal part of the section between I and 2 will be a wood color. The sides of the Model 9 are of the greatest importance. They are the color of the 6 cubes, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. The colors of I and 2 are wanting, viz. light buff and sage green. Thus the section between I and 2 can be found by its wanting the colors of the cubes I and 2. Looking at models 10, 11, and 12 in a similar manner, the reader will find they represent the sections between cubes 3 and 4, cubes 5 and 6, and cubes 7 and 8 respectively.